Okay, I'm back in the studio. All right, we're away from the downtown LA tweakers, a long way away. All right, and we are good. I've got the last little bit of today's courthouse proceedings to give you guys from my trusty notebook. And I'm not going to lie to you, there were definitely some L's to be taken in court today, but there was also a massive W, which came in the form of Drew Findling, the billion-dollar lawyer, the super lawyer. Okay, he was representing King Von back in the day when he was still alive. He made an absolutely raucous case to the judge. I would say that this was the most compelling moment that I have seen in court so far. This was damn near like Johnny Cochran, if the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit. Like, Drew made a very emotional speech to the judge. You could have heard a pin drop in the courtroom. Everybody was locked in. Even Durk was locked in. Durk was in awe of Drew Findling. He was killing it. So if anybody's got a shot at bringing this case home for Durk, bringing Durk home, is Drew Findling. And there were some very, very interesting things that came up later on, which I'm going to talk about. There's been some speculations about some very, very interesting little moves that Drew Findling might actually be able to produce to turn this whole case around, and it's unbelievable. But before I get to that, I want to tell you a little bit more about some of the evidence that was kind of brought up before Drew took the stand and really just went to town with his defense of Durk, which really relates to a lot of the gang testimony, music videos, songs, lyrics, a lot of stuff that Drew basically primed himself up to just tear down after the prosecution had their say. Now, respect to the prosecution, they're doing a really good job. After that first day that I went to court and I saw Durk take some W's, the prosecution, they got their game face on, and they have been absolutely walking Durk down, but Drew Findling clapped back at the end of today, and it was very, very interesting. So look, I'm going to just start here, all right? There were basically a couple of songs that were put forward, and, there was talk about a bunch of songs. I think that actually, there were 4 songs that were brought up and put forward. I think the judge now told the prosecution to pick 2 of the 4 songs to trim things down and save a bit of time, and I'm not going to lie to you, I was gassed when they confirmed that the 2 songs that had been chosen was back again. I don't even, that's why it comes to cash. Oh my God, one of my favorite songs of all time. Probably the best drill song ever made. Back Again. King Von, Prince Dre, Lil Durk. Absolute slammer. Like literally one of my best songs ever. When that comes on in the gym or the car, bro, I might catch a body. So that one, as well as Still Running, which I believe is on the joint album with Lil Baby, and that's got some pretty incriminating stuff on there as well. But the judge said, why have you chosen Back Again? Bear in mind that song was released while King Von was still alive. And the prosecution, this was pretty spicy. Okay, the prosecution said, well, PW1 gets shouted out in Back Again. Now, this was the confirmation. People saying, how do you know OTF Jam is number one? Because the lyric mentions Jam, and they said specifically, Jam, like, let me just pull it up. So, backagaingenius.com. All right, so the song was Back Again, all right? And they said a lot of these lyrics in court. They said, I don't even ask when it comes to cash, they catch and blast his ass, all right? But they mentioned this. They said, Jam, get out that jam. I gave him 50, ain't got to ask again. They said Jam, all right? They made that very, very clear. Now, this was very, very crazy. I'm not going to lie to you. This was absolutely wild. So they basically brought up these lyrics. Jam got out that jam. I gave him 50, ain't got to ask again. And they said, okay, that's a shout out to PW1. And they said that Jam had confirmed to prosecutors that this lyric was about him. And even the next part where it says he was catching murders way back then, that's when the Max was in. Now, what's interesting, they didn't bring this up, obviously, but there's a very notorious 600 Mac that the 600 gang were notorious for running around with and shooting people with. Well, apparently OTF Jam has actually testified to the feds that he said that Durk gave him 50,000 when he got out. Jam, get out that jam. I gave him 50, ain't got to ask again, because he was basically paying him up front for future crimes that Durk might want to do for him. And Jam admits that he was killing people before Lil Pab. He basically claims that this Mac lyric was about him. And bro, it's crazy. OTF Jam is going to testify that everybody knew that his favorite gun was a Mac. That's what they said. Now, the defense said this isn't relevant. These autobiographical facts, it's just music. It's prejudicial. The judge said overruled. All right. And the defense said, this quid pro quo for bounty, it's not sufficient. Giving him 50 so he ain't got to ask again 2 years before the murder happened. Like that, 3 years before the murder happened, that don't mean nothing. The judge says, look, if the jury rules that this is corroborative of what the witness thought and that he was being given money up front, prepaid murders, this isn't the only piece of evidence. And he said Back Again will be allowed. Now, look, as I said, I keep saying this, right? Because people have been getting on me saying, he didn't rule that. He said back again would be allowed. I don't think he signed the paperwork yet. We might get the actual confirmation in a filing in the next couple of days. Just like last time when he said Durk's phone was going to be allowed and it took 2 days for the filing to be. He said back again was allowed. He said it's allowed, all right? So just take the cope, all right, and just, I'm sorry. I am sorry, all right, if anybody is upset by some of the rulings that are being made, or some of the decisions that the judge is being made. I feel like the judge is being very fair. He is letting everybody know what he plans to do before he does it. That's just what's going on. So, apologies if anybody's upset by that. But this isn't, me trying to dunk on anyone or anything like that, but that's what the judge, I'm telling you what was said in the courtroom. They said the song's still running. The prosecution said it shows Durk's intent to spin for Von, all right? And I'll tell you what, I'll pull that one up again real quick. So the prosecution read a few of these lyrics in front of the court, and again, it was pretty spicy, all right? This is a song with Lil Baby and Meek Mill. But they brought up some of these lyrics. They literally said some of these. They said, you must be out of your mind if you think we ain't spinning for bro. We spinning for show. Even the guy, like, I'm not going to lie, shout out to the prosecutor, man. When the prosecutor dropped the lyric, he dropped it with perfect cadence. Like, sometimes they be saying lines, like how I be saying lines that don't really rhyme. He didn't say we spinning for sure. He said for show. I swear the prosecutor, he must be, you know what I'm saying? He must be as locked into the music as I am. But he said, the way he said it was on point. He was like, must be out of your mind. You think we ain't spinning for bro. We spinning for show. It was like, damn, you on point. You nailed it. Like, you nailed that shit. I'm not going to lie. When they play back again, I'm going to have to try not to sing along because this is ass. I don't even ask when it comes to, oh my God. It's even this one. I mean, I don't love this song. Like, Back Again's one of my favorite songs of all time. But, and then he said other ones. He said they put up for shows. We spin in the cribs and traps for sure. We spinning in shows. And we took L's for sure. But in Chicago, they know we winning for sure. Do it for what? They didn't say that bit, but they said we do it for Von. We don't wait till it died down. We load and do it tomorrow. We do it on feet. Ask all the ops about us who say we gonna shoot at the cars. And yes, they did even bring up this lyric. Okay, it was a little bit crazy when they brought up this lyric. All right, they literally said. They said that rolls better be bulletproof, little dude. They said dude instead of the M word. You know we gonna shoot at them stars. And they said Quando Rondo's only first interview he did after the death of King Von, where he talked about it, he was in a Rolls Royce. They said this song identifies Quando as the target because he did an interview in the Rolls Royce. I'm sorry, but like this is really, really bad. This is really bad. I don't know why they didn't bring this one up, all right? But I'm not gonna lie. This could be about Quando saying we thought the dude died, but he didn't. 2 Glocks with you when you ride through Philly. I think this could be about, I mean, when was this released? This was released like literally damn near a month after they tried to kill Quando in Georgia, right? Saying we thought he died, but he didn't. I ain't gonna lie, that could be about Quando. But anyway, they basically went back and forth from there. The defense said this is getting cumulative. It's all the same stuff. It's pissed me off. Why do we need so many songs? And the judge was like, well, that's why I'm only letting them get 2. Both allowed. They were going through, all right? And I'm sure the paperwork will reflect that. So they went on to talk about Motion 7. They didn't kind of finalize everything. But the prosecution said, look, we've producing some certificates about our witnesses. We're basically saying that the defense objected to some of the categories of exhibits. They're trying their best to cut it down to 10 witnesses. They're going to do their best on that. And then after that, the judge basically said, okay, we're going to look at Dee Dee's motion in Lamine, which was basically to exclude a certain witness who was that kind of Chicago gang expert. And this is where, in a minute, this kind of laid the foundation for Drew Findling to just absolutely go ham in the courtroom. I'm not going to lie. He went crazy with it. So basically, they said that the judge said, look, the government felt like the BDs rather than OTF was part of the case for a while, saying they could just let the detective kind of speak on lyrics and slang but exclude the BDs. He's basically saying that, look, we severed the case. The BD-GD gang war is in the Stephon Mack case. That's been severed. That's the Vic R murder count. And then basically the government said, look, this is all about who did it and why. It's all about the defendants being young and being in a gang. They grew up in gangs together. OTF and the BDs and all the co-conspirators, they all grew up as gang members. That's why they're doing this for Von. Maybe Quando isn't a GD and Von died for a different reason, but they're doing it for Von. I mean, it's in that song, do it for Von. We do it for Von. We don't wait till it die down. We load up and do it tomorrow. So they did say, look, we could limit that detective from doing too much gang history, just the general background, explaining certain terms, the gang scene in Chicago, how gangs taunt each other, Durk's reaction to co-conspirator number 3 sending him a video dissing the dead. I think they want to explain, like, in Chicago, all this dissing Tuka, smoking ops is a whole thing. And this, what was very, very interesting, is that they claimed that somebody had sent Durk a video of somebody from Quando Rondo's crew dissing King Von. I don't know for sure. I'm just going to guess. This is just my speculation. I have a feeling that this is a complete guess, but I have a feeling this was when Lil Tim dropped his song Off the List, where he said, just scratched a new pussy M-word off the list, and he was dissing King Von, all right? It was the whole King Von diss song, I'm not going to lie. And look, no disrespect, but it's a good song. Like, the beat's good. It's kind of got that young boy kind of vibe to it. And apparently someone sent that to Durk, and Durk responded, yeah, wait for the get back. Not really a good look. They said a cooperator testimony and the gang signs will basically show everyone's allegiance to the BDs, and that's important because of the connection to King Von. Now, they basically said the participating witness one was going to basically explain the story, that the reason Durk had put money on his bit. So this is Jam, right? The reason Durk put money on his books when he was still in jail, and then when he got out, gave him money and shouted him out and put him in OTF, was because he was a killer for the BDs, not because he was a good rapper. Now, DD's lawyer responded. He was really, he was a little, I feel like DD's lawyer, he gets a little overly emotional, and I think sometimes it works. He's like very grandstandy. He's kind of trying to do what Drew Findling really kills it at. And there's times when it feels a little bit like you're getting a little too over emotional about small stuff. And there's other times it's like, okay, DD's lawyer's making a good point. But he made a big point saying the BDs weren't part of this case a year ago. They weren't supposed to bring up any of these gang affiliations of all these members. And then they basically said, okay, well, let's not have everyone talk about the same thing. Let's let Drew Findling take over. And then Drew took over, and I'm not going to lie, this was a tour de force. Like, Drew Findling, they passed him the ball. He went straight for the goal. He went on a not in an emotional way, but he was like, the way he was talking, it was like Johnny Cochran, OJ Simpson, prime. Like, I don't even know. Like, prime. Who's that guy? The guy that's Rob Kardashian or whatever. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? The original big boy Rob Kardashian or whatever. It was incredible, okay? So he basically made this big argument. He said I'm going to try and say it a little bit like he did, but I'm never going to be able to capture his resonance and how good it was. He was like, the prosecution keeps on switching their story. They switched their theory on OTF when the detective said that it was just a musical collective. They said, I think I might have written this wrong, but I think he said this just exudates the tardiness of the case. They said Von was killed in a dispute by a rapper from Savannah, Georgia. It's got nothing to do with the BDGD gang wars. They're saying in interviews, we hear, this was like such a great speech. I'm not going to lie. This was one of the best moments. He said in the interviews, it says it's got nothing to do with gangs. It's about a premature music release and a dispute about girlfriends. This was a really good point. I'm not going to lie. They said the shooting in Blackshear, Georgia, where they tried to kill Quando Rondo, they said this is a small town. The shooting of Quando Rondo is the biggest thing that's ever happened. He said this was crazy. He said for Blackshear, Georgia, the shooting of Quando Rondo was like the OJ Simpson's case. They investigated this so much as they possibly could. The local cops took it so seriously. It was the biggest case they ever had. And they said there was no indication of gang activity. No colors, no signs, no indication at the show before Quando got shot up, no indication at the scene. There's nothing, no evidence that the shooting of Quando in Blackshear, Georgia had anything to do with gang activity. Now, he was doing a great job, but like realistically, like deep down, like we all know, bro, what do you mean no colors? This ain't Bloods and Crips. Like, they don't have colors. Like the GDBDs, like they don't do colors. That's not what they do. That's not how they roll. That's not a thing. Okay. But it's smart the way he put it across. Said there was no colors, no signs. That's going to play well in front of a jury, probably an LA-based jury that'd be knowing about Bloods and Crips. And then he basically said for the murder on August the 18th and 19th, there was nothing at the scene indicating gang activity. The victims are from Savannah, Georgia. And when everyone was arrested in October of 2023, the participating witness number 2, so not Jam, but someone else, they said repeatedly that they asked them repeatedly, is OTF a gang? And they said, no, they're a musical collective. That witness never said OTF was a gang. It's not a gang. They said that all of these different people that participated in this murder from all over Chicago, all different kinds of gang, but there's no real proof that OTF is really a gang. He said there's no proof of a bounty. They said a guy gets a few grand to be on a song way after the murder. They're trying to make that everything about gangs and bounties last minute, but there's no proof of it. They said the only reason Durk would do this is gang affiliation, but you're not supposed to make this about gang affiliation. They're saying it makes no sense. I'm not going to give my opinion on this next part, but this is what he said. This is the point that he made. He said it's because Durk is poor and black and grew up in the inner city of Chicago and became a Grammy-winning celebrated musician. And while this is going on, Durk was mesmerized by Drew. It was a really convincing... Durk was like, Lock the fuck in looking at Drew. I'm not going to lie to you. Drew was cooking. That's what I wrote down. They said that basically, like, Durk grew up poor and black from Chicago. They're trying to paint him like the guy that he used to be, but he came up, he got out of that. He became a Grammy-winning musician. Maybe he grew up around gangs, in gangs, but he got away from that. And then he said, and this gang expert they're trying to bring in, their plan is to send chills through the spines of these jurors. They're going to make everything about spooky gang activity, but there ain't no proof that this was a gang-related homicide, and there ain't no proof that OTF was a gang. He said many of the exhibits today aren't even about gangs. He said that they should and this didn't make sense. I need to go back and look, but he basically said that, you know, that they drop counts 1, they should drop counts 1 to 7, stick to counts 2 and 6. I was a little bit confused by that part, but I wrote it down, but I'm going to kind of look back at exactly what count was what, but it was very, very convincing, honestly. Like, he made an amazing speech. Basically, it was just like, we should drop this. It's not right. No mention of the gangs. It is not cool. Everyone was locked in. Even the judge was looking. To me, this is my opinion, but the judge looked to me a little bit like he was almost looking at Drew like, look, even if I don't agree with what you're saying, I'm seeing $1 billion lawyer at the top of his game doing a performance. I'm getting this, like Durk doing like they let Durk perform a couple songs in there. It was like, damn, like this guy really one of the greatest lawyers in America right now cooking. Even though I think Durk's case is pretty screwed and it's going to be a long shot, that Drew Findlin speech, I'm not going to lie, it blew me away. Absolutely blew me. Incredible. Absolutely incredible work. So after this, the prosecution said, look, here are some exhibits. And this was quite smart because the prosecution were like, yeah, cool. All right, Drew, your little speech. They said, we want to show you one exhibit. And they put this up on screen. And they'd already mentioned this earlier, but they actually put it up on screen. It was a little bit too far away for me to see exactly. So I think maybe some of the grammar or the wording I'm going to say might be a little bit off. But this is the basically vaguely what happened is that when Von got killed and the footage of him dying was going around where he was trying to beat up Quando and then he got shot. All right. Basically, someone sent it to Durk, and apparently Von's death on video trying to beat up Quando. Apparently, Durk's response was something along the lines of like, "Yeah, he went out like a real gangster. I got to go all out for him." So it's kind of like you saying it's not a gang, not a gang, not a gang. They're saying as soon as Von died and Durk saw the footage, he said, "Yeah, he went out like a real gangster." And they're basically saying, and they brought up as well that he said later on in his academics interview that like Von got killed by a nerd. And so basically the judge was like, okay, cool, let me think about it. I'm going to take that under submission. So after that, they basically kind of like gave some housekeeping about what was going to be going on. The judge explained that they're basically going to get the prosecution to present like a trial indictment. So they're going to kind of consolidate everything into a sequential, just count 1, 2, and 3. None of this discounts, discounted, discounts, moved, whatever. Just 1, 2, 3. These are the counts. They said that they want to produce the witness list. And this was very, very interesting. They said Durk had submitted witnesses. Okay. And basically like, they said that in addition to the 4 experts he already submitted, they're going to have 25 lay witnesses that know about the situation, and they're going to be quite short. They're going to speak for about half an hour each. They're going to have half an hour to cross-examine. So basically like 12 hours of testimony from these witnesses. And this was very interesting. So the judge referred to some other cases and basically said that, they're going to read all of the names of the witnesses to the jury to determine if any of the jury know any of these witnesses. The defense basically said, we want an element of surprise to the people we're going to call. The judge says, does the government have any case law that, forces the defense to reveal their exhibits ahead of time? The prosecution said, well, several courts require a joint exhibit list. We're going to file it, but it's up to you. The judge said, we'll do it ASAP. He said, if I give the defense what they want, I need to know if you want the list that jurors can see, but not the government, basically saying that they can hide from the government who they're going to call as surprise witnesses, but they can't necessarily hide it from the jury because they need to check if the jury knows any of these people. They said if you want the jury to not have the names, you can avoid your right to call a mistrial based on a juror knowing the witnesses. So they're basically saying if you don't even want the jurors to know who these surprise witnesses are, then if suddenly you pull one out of the bag and a juror knows them, you can't then backtrack and say mistrial, we didn't know, because you are basically taking a gamble and saying we want to do it so last minute that if it turns out a juror knows one, we missed our chance to check. The judge says, look, one name, this is really interesting. The judge says, look, one name on the attorney's witness list jumped out. And this was just, I don't want to say who it is. I don't want to identify them. I couldn't possibly identify them. I don't know for sure. But, okay, Drew and the rest of the defense team kind of approached the judge, and the judge said, basically, let's have a private conversation about this. And what I'd never seen this before. The judge pressed a button and started playing like white noise. Like the whole courtroom was like, shh, couldn't hear shit. Like, unless someone was right near you, you couldn't really hear anything. And so the judge is having a conversation with Drew and all of the other defense lawyers, the prosecution kind of all way over their side, just sort of looking at each other talking, and then sort of like a little bit of whispering breaks out amongst the crowd. I'm hearing people all around me speculating, who do you think it is? Who do you think it is? I'm hearing somebody say, hey, I think it might be Quando Rondo. And during this, Durk is even turning around and speaking to his co-defendants. He's laughing with Dee Dee. He's whispering to all of his co-defendants, basically, and they're all talking, talking, whispering, talking about what's going on. Even Dee Dee was saying he was covering his mouth while he was talking to Durk. It was very interesting. Durk, I'm hearing people all around whispering who it might be. I'm hearing people saying it could be Durk's father. He was in the courtroom, so in theory, he shouldn't have been allowed to be in the courtroom if he was going to be a witness, but we don't know exactly how that's going to play out. So I'm thinking, it's probably not Durk's father, not Quando. People think could it be Lil Tim? And like, there's a couple of people going back and forth, and some people are theorizing maybe it's Drew, because Drew was King Von's lawyer back in the day. Now, what's interesting is basically the prosecution, once the white noise ended, right? What was crazy is, look, I'll just be real with you. This is what was said. Once the white noise ended, everyone got back in their seats, and the prosecution said, look, we want to ask a question, Judge. They said, basically, we think maybe what's going on is that the witness might represent one of the people in the courtroom. And the judge basically said, look, I think it's who you think it is. And after that was said, I'm not going to lie, Drew like grinned. He was just like, Drew was like, it looked to me like it was like, it was never said who it was. It was never confirmed. That could be a grin of like, you ain't got a clue. You think it's me, ain't me. So we don't know for sure. All I will say is that Drew did represent King Von back in the day. And I tell you what, I'm going to pull up a few of my own exhibits. Check this out. So this is Drew Findling with King Von. This is Drew Findling doing an RIP post to King Von. All right. So maybe he's trying to slide for Von too. Maybe he's trying to slide on that witness stand for Von. But this was November the 8th, all right? He represented King Von and Durk when they was fighting that Atlanta case, I believe. There was kind of other instances. I don't know if he represented Von on other stuff, but hey, Von was getting some money. He had the $1 billion lawyer locked in, all right? And Drew posted this just devastating. Intelligent, creative, and super talented. Rest in peace, King Von from the O. The world mourns your loss. I ain't gonna lie. Them 7 people that Von allegedly killed, all right? Their families definitely weren't mourning the loss. That's all I'll say, okay? Because allegedly Von was a serial killer who killed 7 people. Allegedly, according to some people, all right? So I don't know about that, but hey, Drew's doing what Drew's got to do. Now, this is very interesting. Now, I posted about this earlier on Instagram, and I saw a bunch of people in my comments talking about, you're a courtroom reporter. You don't even know. You don't even know that a lawyer can't testify. Rule 3.7 of the Bar Association. Yeah, cool. Rule 33.7, lawyer as a witness, American Bar Association. A lawyer shall not act as an advocate at trial in which the lawyer is likely to be a necessary witness unless the testimony relates to an uncontested issue. Now, I don't know exactly how that means, but like it could be uncontested. It could be, I don't actually know how that works, but there's clearly an exception. But number 2, I thought was more irrelevant. Number 2, the testimony relates to the nature and value of legal services rendered in the case. Could be related to how much did King Von pay you to represent him? How much did Lil Durk pay you to represent him legally? Were they getting legal money from music? Are we going to dispute the fact that they were getting street money and putting bounties out in the street when really he knew that their finances were both completely legit? He might even say, well, I don't know. He might be able to say, look, in my opinion, King Von wasn't the biggest BD in town. The world was mourning his loss. He was intelligent, creative, and super talented, allegedly at murders. But like, I don't know. And then thirdly, it says the disqualification of the lawyer could work substantial hardship on the client. So there are reasons. It says, a lawyer may act as an advocate in a trial in which another lawyer from the lawyer's firm is likely to be called as a witness unless precluded from doing so by Rule 1.7 or Rule 1.9. Now, here's what I'll say. Okay, I thought for a minute that like maybe it's like, look, maybe it'll come to a point where Drew will say, okay, cool, I'm taking a step back and I'm going to be a witness now and I'm going to let Brian Steele land the plane. But on the other hand, Brian Steele is great in court and he's got aura, but I haven't seen him deliver a speech on the level that Drew Findling speech today. He was taking like a tiny little shred of evidence that weren't even that useful, polishing it up. He made that shit look like a gold iced out O blockchain. Like, I swear, it was impressive. That was very, very impressive. So anyway, we don't know what's going to go on. There's speculation that Drew might be testifying. There's speculation that that's not even allowed under certain rules. There's exceptions to those rules. There's theories, we don't know. I can't tell you exactly who it is. I don't know who it is. We don't have confirmation as to who it is, but these are the things that point to who it might be. And obviously the fact that the judge said, one name jumped out to me immediately. I mean, that would suggest to me that, like, yeah, Rule 3.7 says that they're not supposed to testify unless it's under certain conditions. That would jump out at the judge. He's saying, what are the conditions? And they went and had a big side part. They were playing white noise for quite a long time. So they discussed this for a very long time. And I'll keep it real, Drew was doing a lot of the talking in that. But anyway, after that, they basically explained how the trial was going to go down. It sounds like they're expecting a lot of people to be there. They will be getting people to put their phones in locked away pouches like they did at the David trial. They said they're going to have 80 potential jurors. They said that realistically, look, I might not be able to get back into the courtroom at least for a little while, because they said that there's apparently going to be so many potential jurors. The jury pool is so big. The entire court might be full, at least at the initial stages. So we might have to get past this jury selection to even be able to get back into the court and report. So I'll let you guys know as soon as I kind of know the deal with that one. But they said that the judge is going to kind of go over the principles of the law. The prosecutors can have an opportunity to kind of break down the indictment for the jury so they can understand, give details about the murder. There'll be questionnaires for all of the jurors who are going to explain everything. Some will be dismissed for different reasons. If some are going through extreme hardship and they can't afford to be off work and away for that long, or if there's other reasons, they might be disqualified if they know witnesses, etc. All of that is going to basically come down to they're going to try and get together a whole bunch of jurors. Now, they said that they're going to try and get through this quickly, but the timeline, it's all up in the air. So I'm not going to speculate too much on that. I'm not going to give you information that's going to be out of date within a few days. But they basically said that once all of the jury is selected, we don't know when that's going to be exactly. Both sides will give opening statements. They'll get an hour each to basically give their opening statements. Pretty much. He said he wants to get through things quickly. He doesn't want to have 12 hours of cross-examination for every person. He said that even though every defendant, there's all these different defendants, even though they've got their own separate lawyer, he says he doesn't want them asking the same questions. He doesn't want all of their different lawyers asking the same stuff to the witnesses over and over again. He said, if it's been asked once, I'm going to ask you to move on. And he said, I'm going to be strict about that. We haven't got all day. He said, I could sit here all day and try this case as long as I want, but it's not respectful of the jurors' time to keep going through that. So they talked about keeping the names of the jurors secret. They basically said that the counsel will be allowed to know the names of the jurors. They're forbidden from telling the names to anyone, their clients, anyone else. The prosecution said that they want to make it clear they don't think the lawyers should be able to investigate the jurors. They shouldn't be able to use the names or information to try and find out anything personal about them. And it seemed like everyone was kind of on the same page. Now, Dee Dee's lawyer actually put his hand up, put himself forward and said, is there any chance I could have an extra 15 minutes to open for Dee Dee because, 1 hour, but we've got all these different defendants and different lawyers. And the judge basically said, look, I gave an hour. I want to be fair. He said, if you're asking if you can have an extra 15 minutes and the prosecution can have an extra 15 minutes, I'll give it some thoughts. But he basically said the defense needs to kind of get themselves together and come up with a joint plan. He definitely isn't willing to give, an extra 15 minutes to the defense, but not to the prosecution. And it sounds like he's really trying to operate on a schedule. So if the jury selection goes down fast, I feel like the judge might say, all right, you can have your extra 15 minutes, both sides. They were basically confirming that obviously we've seen everybody in shackles. Now, what's interesting is I noticed today when Dee Dee stood up, I noticed he had like the handcuffs on his belt line. And so I had noticed like it didn't look like people were in shackles, but what it clearly is I hung around a little bit longer at the end. And in these hearings, it seems like they bring them in, unshackle them, and then when it's over, they stand them back up and shackle them again. When it comes to the trial, they'll be allowed to wear, suits and real clothes so that they're not prejudicing the jury. Because if you come in an orange jumpsuit and shackles, you look like a convict, all right? So they said that they'll be allowing that. They said that they are going to move the trial to a bigger room. Hopefully they will allow the media to be in there, but it's possible that it might be busy. They said that the defense actually gets a little side room where they can actually, kind of have conference and keep some of their belongings. And they basically said that, there's a lot of back and forth that goes on. But that's basically the whole of it. It's headed towards trial. I will keep you guys posted about that as it happens. I think this is the biggest story in hip hop currently. Obviously, the David story is really one of the biggest true crime stories in the world right now. But this Durk story, I don't think there's been a bigger, more controversial hip hop story, drill music story, Chirac story. This really is the culmination of years of back and forth, King Von, Youngboy, and really this is going to dictate the future of hip hop, in my opinion. If Durk beats this, drill music is back. I think if Durk loses, all this gangster stuff is over with, and Pooh Shiesty is going to be that final nail in the coffin. We're beginning to see the consequences of all of this gangster stuff. So I'll keep you guys posted on anything else as I hear it, but I'm going to end it there. Thank you for watching, and I'm out. Peace.